What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS live stream for round 2, this time for the Scottish Open. Going to cover everything you need to know for tomorrow's slate, whether it's the weather, we'll talk through some DFS strategy, and 10 of my favorite plays for Friday's slate that I think you might want to keep an eye on for your own lineups. We'll start this out with the review of day 1, which I just want to share the sweat that I've got going on. So going to bring up my single entry lineup, which is absolutely smashing right now. You can see it's in 4th place of the $200 single entry for 10 grand right now. And honestly, it has a lot of potential. It's far from a perfect lineup. You can see I don't have anybody that's winning in it. The guys that are my stud options are tied for 15th right now. Of course, Rasmus Højgaard and my boy Justin Harding, the 2 Euros I took a huge shot on this week at pretty much single, almost sub 1% ownership, are absolutely smashing. So just wanted to share that from my end. On the other side with 150 max, it's also been a pretty solid start there. So obviously, hopefully that continues throughout the weekend. It's unlikely, of course, to carry the number 4 spot throughout the weekend, but who knows? Maybe we'll take it wire to wire. I've actually done it before in a GPP. But from the statistical perspective, what you guys are here for, not to look at my lineups, what I'm sweating, what I'm expecting for tomorrow is what we saw this afternoon. So in the afternoon, the wind gusts got upwards of right around 20 miles an hour. And then right around 3 to 4 p.m., they actually ramped up to right around 30 miles an hour. And when that happened, the scoring average went from right around even par, or actually at one point it was under par for a little bit there, to well over 3 shots over par. So if we split this by the wave, you'll see what I'm talking about. Absolute havoc. In the morning wave, by the end of the morning, it played to right around 0.4 of a stroke over par. A lot of that was due to the wind kicking up right around 11 a.m. over there. And then in the afternoon, it was absolute hectic. I mean, hole 18 played, 0.8 shots over par. It almost played like a par 5. Hole number 8 almost played like another par 5, and that was only 450 yards right there. And in fact, in the afternoon, it was 4 holes out of 18 ended up playing under par. So expect to see conditions like that, because from the weather perspective, it's going to get even worse. This is what we saw on Thursday, which, like I said, in the morning wasn't all that bad. That's why we targeted a lot of morning guys here in this lineup. If you can tell, all of these guys played in the morning wave. That was the strategy that I went with. So we took advantage of that. But in the afternoon, you can see the winds kick up, right around 20 to 25 miles an hour, like I mentioned. Tomorrow, it's the entire day. Every single player is going to be dealing with it. So as early as 7 a.m., you have 20 mile an hour sustained wind gusts, and then 25 to 30 miles an hour of maximal wind gusts there for the entire day. So that is going to cause the scoring average to absolutely balloon. In terms of a cut line percentage, right now, they have it at like +2, +1. There's no shot of that. It's going to be +3, +4, maybe even +5 by the end of tomorrow. If you thought the scoring average in the afternoon was bad, +3.6, I mean, it could be even worse tomorrow. We're looking at even more sustained winds, wind gusts that could be even more difficult. And even if the field staff tries to account for that, right, and maybe make the course a little bit easier to play, move up a few tee boxes, that sort of thing, it's not like it's going to make up a whole shot difference, right? It's still going to play at least 2 shots over par. And if we take the current cut line, which is almost at +2 right now, it's at least getting to +3, if not +4 or +5. So these numbers in data golf are just incorrect, in my opinion. I don't know how they're calculating that. I'm assuming it's based on past performances at this event where it's played like a birdie fest. But obviously, from what we saw today, and then the conditions that aren't even all that far out at this point, right? It's going to lock at 2 a.m. So at 2 a.m. is what you're seeing here at 7 a.m. right there. What is that? It's 9 hours from now, right? This should be a relatively accurate weather report here. So in terms of like a playable wave, you pretty much have to target both waves, right? It's not like you can take the guys in the morning. I hope that you're getting away from those weather conditions, because this is a relatively accurate forecast right here. And on top of that, you might have like a 0.3, 0.4 shot difference between the 2 waves. That's just due to the receptiveness of the greens. They're not as baked out in the morning. They're also a little bit more pristine because players haven't trampled on them all day. It's not a huge difference though. Like if you're trying to split hairs between guys up top, sure, maybe take the guy in the morning wave over the guy in the afternoon wave. But it is certainly not something that I'm stacking like I did going into the week, like I did with my Showdown lineup. Well, I shouldn't say my Showdown lineup, my single entry lineup, right? Where I went a full 6-0 with the AM wave. I'm probably only going to have a few lineups like that in my set of 150 here for the next round. It's going to be by happenstance. It's not going to be because I set roles in my optimizer to go out there and fit in so many of these weather stacks like I did for going into 4-round stuff. So just wanted to get that out there. We will catch up on chat before we hop into the plays, which I'll bring up right now. So let's see who's down there in chat. We got Casustrophic, who says, what do you guys think about prize picks? Which I absolutely love. Today, our picks went 10, 3 and 1, I believe. So 10 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie. Day one, they went like 11, 1 and 2 or something like that. So overall, it's like an 83% hit rate. We're absolutely killing it over there. So if you haven't joined the Patreon, if you haven't already watched all the prize picks content I'm doing, would highly recommend it. I mean, if it's legal in your state, you're pretty much leaving money on the table if you're not playing prize picks. We've been absolutely killing it over there. My hit rate over the last 2 or 3 events has been upwards of 75%, which I'm doing at least 10 props per slate. I mean, anyone out there that does sports betting knows how good that is, right? So again, I think you're leaving money on the table over there. Evan Lane says, woke up to you on top of the leaderboards. Congrats. Yeah, I was on top of pretty much every leaderboard I'm in. I'm in like 10 or 12 single entries, and I have that same lineup in it. So obviously, that same lineup that's on the top of the $200 single entries, also on top of that 33 Albatross, the $12, all that sort of fun stuff. So, yeah, get used to seeing me at the top of the leaderboard, boys. I'm going to be up there all weekend. Nick Mars says, I think they put the pins in more accessible locations. I think that's a possibility, but it's hard to know, right? And even the pin sheet that they put out is impossible to read. I mean, we were joking about it in the Discord, but it just has letters and numbers on it. They don't even have the graphic of the greens. So, even if we look at the pin sheet, it's going to be hard to tell, Nick. So I don't think it's anything we can act on, unfortunately. You have Jack who says, I watched Willie Z fits in Morikawa group. I think they all finished +1, which is a bit of an achievement. Yeah, especially in the afternoon wave. Like, that's 2 shots better than average. So we're going to talk about a few of the plays I'm getting to here. That's part of the narrative I'm getting to. Like a Patrick Cantlay, people might say that he had a disappointing day, right? I think that's kind of fair to say. Not when you compare it to the average in the afternoon, right? He actually played a solid round. And if we're expecting the morning wave to play slightly easier than the afternoon, why not get to Patrick Cantlay? And I have him at just 17% owned, which at $9,200, like he's clearly mispriced here. I think that you need to get to those type of plays, right? Where like quote unquote disappointed, like you're saying, right? They're +1, but they actually played pretty solid rounds. Those are the exact type of players I'm getting to. And Scotty Scheffler is a little bit of a unique situation, which we'll talk about him here in a second. But that's kind of what I'm going with here for the second round, are the guys that kind of got hammered in the second wave that survived, that went out there, they put up a fight, right? To shoot even 2 to 3 over in that wave today, I'd argue is impressive, right? If you went out there and shot under par, that's great, but you're going to be chalked tomorrow, right? You're going to be like 10 to 15% owned at the very least. So I'm trying to take the guys that kind of just scraped by. So I would agree with you there. And he says, yeah, I'm on Prize Picks looking to play my 5K entry. Yeah, I've been saving it too. I know a lot of people have been. I'm probably going to wait for a slate where it's just like abundantly obvious that there's a huge edge, where like maybe there's like a stroke and a half whole stroke bias when it comes to the strokes, birdie and a half bias when it comes to the birdie lines. I'm going to wait for that kind of slate. What I've noticed over the last 2 to 3 is that they've been a little bit more fair. Now, we've still absolutely killed them on it, right? We're still hitting it over a 75% clip. But when we get a slate where it's like a whole stroke and a half or a birdie and a half bias, I mean, you can hit 95% props on the slates like that. I mean, you can just absolutely smash. So, yeah, Ricky, I'm saving it too. We'll have to see when we deploy that. Rush Shaw says, do you think Scotty can get it rolling tomorrow? I do think so. We'll talk about him here in a second. And Nick Mars says, do you think they have dew in Scotland? LOL, do you think the greens are soft? The AM guys may have an advantage. Yeah, they do. That's everywhere. So that's not just anywhere in the world. In the morning, you're going to get slightly more receptive greens. That's just when it's overnight, it's cooler, right? So when air's cooler, and this is something that people, they should teach you in school. When air's cooler, it holds more moisture, right? Tends to actually make the cold air with the moisture go down from the clouds, come down to the ground, right? Because it's cold air, and cold air goes down and hot air goes up, right? So the air with all that moisture goes down to the ground, it settles on the grass, and that's why we get dew. That happens everywhere. That's not like a thing down in South Florida, thing that you see in like parts of the country. Yeah, so that's why you see that effect in the morning wave. And also the greens don't have those scuff marks. That's another reason why you like guys in the morning. Let's talk about these players, though. Like I said, there's 10 that I'm pointing out. I'm not just playing 10 players tomorrow. So that's why a lot of this is blacked out here, obviously. Those are all on my Patreon. If you want all my ownership projections, my entire player pool, who I'm definitely fading, you definitely want to go ahead and check that out. But we are going to talk about 10 of my quote-unquote core picks for the slate. And one of them is Scotty Scheffler. I know we just got a question about him, and I have him at just 11.5% owned. And he fits the description of somebody who maybe didn't have the best day, but he definitely showed some potential. And for Scotty Scheffler, I mean, for him to even shoot 3 over par today, I think that was getting a lot out of his round because he was missing greens. He was not, I mean, he couldn't make a putt for his life. I mean, he 3-putted from 10 feet at least 4 times that I can remember, missed multiple putts from within 5 feet on the day, almost broke his putter on the second hole. It was that frustrating that early for him. And in general, he looked jet lagged. He looked like somebody who was dealing with a lot of fatigue. And the main thing for Scotty, right? A lot of people would go, oh, I want to take guys that are playing in the morning wave, which makes sense. I'm going to have plenty of them in my player pool. For Scotty Scheffler, I am glad he's playing in the afternoon. He's going to have time to get over that jet lag, which a lot of people forget about. He's going to need time to recuperate, to go sleep, get back on a normal schedule, whatever normal is going to be for him at this point. And yeah, he played at the JP McManus Pro-Am, but he really looked irritable out there today. I mean, the announcers were talking about it. He's never looked that irritable on a golf course before. I mean, if he can get out there, get recharged, he's going to have a whole at least 12, 14 hours to get that done. I think he can go out there and shoot something low. And to make the cut, he's probably going to have to shoot at least even par, maybe 1 under par, something like that. And we've seen Scotty Scheffler time and time again, right? Bad first round. When was the last time he did that? Oh, that's right. The US Open. And what did he do there? Went to finish second place at that event, right? So just because he's gone out there and had a bad first round, do not write him off. Do not go, oh, Scotty Scheffler is going to miss the cut this week. Yeah, people said the same thing at the US Open, and then he almost broke the slate, right? So just understand that there's going to be a lot of overreactions. And if he would have gone out there and shot 2, maybe even 3 under par today, you'd be looking at a 20 to 25% owned Scotty Scheffler, right? Somebody who's 2.5 times his owned. And frankly, probably somebody I'm not playing, somebody I'm not getting to in my player pool. So perhaps it was a good thing that he didn't play his best golf today. We get a low owned world number 1 here for Showdown in round 2. And there's more than enough salary to pay up for him. He's nearly $11,000, but there's plenty of guys in the 8K range I absolutely love. We'll talk about a few options in the 7K range, and even the top of the 6K range is absolutely loaded. I mean, guys like Johnny Vegas, we'll talk about later, guys like an Arnaban Lahiri at $6,900 are extremely solid plays on this slate. So you're not going to have any trouble fitting in Scotty Scheffler and perhaps maybe even somebody else above $10,000. You probably take 2 stud options, go the studs and duds approach and get it done that way. Next up, we'll talk about Cantlay. I kind of talked about it before. He had a decent day today, right? You know, regardless of the wave. But when you factor in the wave and the conditions he was playing in, he had one of the best rounds of the day. So at $9,200, I am certainly getting there per his price tag. I think he's one of the better priced players on the slate, especially from a points per dollar perspective. And more importantly than anything, Patrick Cantlay at 17% owned. He could easily be 25 to 30% owned here. I mean, the price tag is a clear leakage compared to the guys around him. I mean, Cam Smith, I don't want to spill the complete beans here, but he's going to be mega chalk. You're going to be looking at like at least 20% ownership. I'll give you that much at least on somebody like Cam Smith. You go down to Sam Burns. I don't necessarily hate the play, but he's also going to be like 18% owned. Cantlay at 17%. It's not as chalky as a true 17%, right? For 4-round stuff, 17% would be up there in like the top 10 in terms of ownership. But when it comes to Showdown, all of the guys here up top get extra ownership. And that's because pricing is a lot softer. You can fit in more of these stud options up top. So just understand, and I understand 11% owned for Scotty Scheffler is like royally under-owned for Scotty Scheffler in Showdown because of the pricing, because he's $10,900 and you can fit in so many players. These ownership numbers tend to be a little bit more inflated. So I like getting to those 2 players. There's quite a few other guys I like up top, obviously. I'm not going to go over all of them, but in general, they fit that same type of strategy where they're not going to be super high-owned players. You guys know me. I'm not about taking the chalk out there. And more importantly, they're players that have actually shown something to this point. Like I said, Scotty Scheffler, for as bad as his putting was, he still showed some flashes. He still hit a few decent drives. He still hit a few decent iron shots, right? It was just the bad, the ugly, way outnumbered the positive from today. And maybe he'll get over it. Maybe he won't, right? But at 11% owned, I love plays like that. Patrick Cantlay, right? Relatively low owned. There's plenty of other pivots here in the 9K range that I like getting to. Of course, just trying to figure out who those low owned plays are going to be. So if you have ownership projections, you have at it, right? Get out there, take some of those pivots. If not, join the Patreon. Join on. We have all these players projected on there. Next up, we've got Max Homa at $8,200. He shot 1 over today, right? So 1 over par. That was still 2 shots better, almost 3 shots better than the average in the afternoon. So though it looks disappointing on paper, and a lot of the casuals that play golf will look at the leaderboard and go, oh, Max Homa must have had a terrible day today. he played a lot better than average. And if he was in the morning wave, he would be right there with somebody like a John Rahm, Jordan Spieth, Cam Smith that shot 2 under par and would probably be 20-25% owned. So if we're just looking at, comparing his performance to what everyone else did at the same time, he played just as good as those players. And that's really the argument I'm getting with there. And somebody like Cantlay arguably played better than all of those guys that are at 2 under par, right? And they're going to be 5, maybe even 10% more owned. And tomorrow, these guys are playing in the better conditions. Like I said with Nick, those greens are slightly more receptive. Now, we don't know how much more receptive they're going to be, but it should be slightly more receptive, and they're going to be more pristine anyways. Everything is pointing us towards taking these guys that quote unquote struggled here in the afternoon wave, right? Because some of them are playing better golf relatively than their peers. And then, of course, you're getting lower ownership, lower price tags on guys like a Max Homa, that sort of thing, making them some of my favorite plays on the slate. Keegan Bradley's playing in the afternoon, so he does not fit that description. He's somebody who'll be playing in the latter half, like 7:30 a.m. Eastern time is when he's teeing off tomorrow morning, which I guess is right around like 12:30 time over there in Scotland. But more than anything, Keegan Bradley is a ball striker, and the conditions tomorrow are going to be brutal. You're talking just 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, maybe 35 to 40 miles an hour at one point for all we know, and guys that can just really hit the ball with oomph. Solid ball strikers, guys that do not put much spin on the golf ball. And if you're looking for a low spin player, it's Keegan Bradley. And that's exactly what you're looking for in the wind. And as I've gone more and more experienced with PGA DFS, I have found that I used to look at apex height when I was trying to figure out wind stuff, trying to model what players theoretically should play better in the wind. And I found that over the years, that's not it. It makes sense, right? The higher you hit it, the more time the wind has to hit it. But even more importantly is spin rate. And I've just figured this out as a golfer myself, somebody who's improving my game. I'm a single digit handicap, borderline scratch golfer here. Somebody who, when, I'm talking to professionals, talking to club fitters, it's all about your spin rate, right? When you're playing in the wind, everything gets exacerbated when you're hitting into the wind. Guys like Keegan Bradley that are the best ball strikers in the world that have those low penetrating ball flights, it's because they hit it like a knuckleball. It doesn't have like hardly any spin on it. So when you have these strong wind gusts, particularly side winds, like what you're going to have for most of the holes here at this golf course, he's not going to be dealing with nearly as much dispersion issues. I mean, he's going to be a lot more consistent hitting fairways and greens tomorrow. And that stat is easy to find. Like spin rates are something that all the shot link stats will give you for every single player. Apex heights are only measured for one shot a round. So this is, something I've actually completely changed in my modeling over the last few months here is I'm trying to take the more consistent approach looking at spin rate. And I can guarantee you guys, no one else is doing that in the industry. I'm probably the only one who started to do this. I probably shouldn't even have spilled the beans that I'm doing it at this point because I'm sure other people will start to look into it. But they don't know how I do it. I've been doing it for quite some time. I'm starting to get it refined at this point. And once it's down to a science, it'll be something that I'm including on my spreadsheets here. It'll be essentially their average spin rate. And then next to it, I'll give you a ranking in the field, right? So the guys that have like the lowest spin rates would correlate to quote unquote playing better in the wind. So that's what we're doing with Keegan Bradley. He's one of the lower spin rate players we have on tour. Lucas Herbert absolutely loves this golf course. He'll also be teeing off in the afternoon wave, so much like a Keegan Bradley there, which isn't ideal, but I'm not only playing the morning wave, right? Like I said, it's going to be like a third of a shot, maybe a 0.4 shot difference between the two waves there. More importantly, I'm looking for guys that are coming in with form, that are low owned, and then have that upside. And for Lucas Herbert, he was not nearly as high owned as people expected this week. I saw projections on him at like 15 to 20%. I thought he'd be closer to like 10, 11%, and he came in at right around 11.5. So looks like I was pretty spot on with that projection. And when it comes to Showdown, I mean, a lot of the casuals that don't do research and Showdown contests are just littered with people that don't do their research, that just spend all their salary. They take the names that they love. That's why guys like Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, for example, just are royally overowned in Showdown contests. Guys like Lucas Herbert, who I think people should know about, right? He's a PGA Tour winner. He's a top 50 player in the official World Golf Rankings. Go overlooked by those slapdicks, the people that just don't play much DFS golf. So I'll be taking him there. He has great course history here. He has 2 top 10 finishes around the Renaissance Club. He's played well on link-style tracks historically. If you take a look at his performances on some of the DP World Tour events on these quote-unquote link-style golf courses, he has a few other top 10, top 5 finishes. And, of course, just a solid ball striker. Another player like Keegan Bradley, who's kind of known for having a low spin rate. So if he's going to be playing in those super difficult conditions in the afternoon, he is the exact type of player I'm looking to get to. Next up, we got Sebastian Munoz. He's teeing off in the morning. He's $7,300, so relatively cheap. And if you know me, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, probably even just a few weeks at this point, you know that Sebastian Munoz, one of my favorite showdown plays, one of the higher birdie better percentage players in all of the PGA Tour, I believe. He's top 10 at this point of the year. He's usually top 5 if you look over like a 24 to 50 round sample size. But Munoz, he has the ball striking I'm looking for as well. Another solid striper of the irons. And while he's not a low spin rate player, in fact, he's actually a higher spin rate player, he has put up performances in the wind in the past that have impressed us. So, anecdotally, he hasn't been all that bad in the wind. I mean, the stats don't really back that up from the spin rate perspective, but I think he's going to be royally underowned. I mean, I'm at 6.2%. I would not be surprised if he came in lower owned because he was at +2 the last time I checked, which he may or may not have finished at +2. I'm not sure. I didn't check before we got on stream here, but he's in that range, kind of like these other low-owned sleeper picks I'm trying to get to, where it seems like they had this horrible round, but he was in the hard conditions today, right? If we normalize it to the average, he would have shot something like even par, or potentially even 1 under par in the conditions in the morning. So guys like him, I think, are going to be overlooked, and he's a great showdown play to begin with because of his high birdie percentage. Next up, we got Erik van Rooyen. He fits that same exact description. High birdie or better percentage player. Teed off in the afternoon wave. He was +2 the last time I checked, may have finished at +3. I'm not sure about EVR there, but in either circumstance, he checks the box from the scoring perspective. He's going to be low owned. I have him at 2% right now, which might even be a little bit high. Might even come in lower owned than that when it's all said and done. And somebody who, like I said, loves this golf course. He's played well here before. Erik van Rooyen loves link style golf course to begin with, so I like him there at $7,000. He'll definitely be in the pool. I still got Lahiri at $6,900. Really, with him, it's all about the fact that he hits fairways. He hits the ball low. He's not somebody who's going to launch it way up into the air. He's just a low apex player. And I know I mentioned that that was my old process when it comes to wind, but it also makes sense, right? Russell Knox, infamous for having a low apex height. Joaquin Niemann, infamous for having a low apex height. Those guys play well in the wind, but there's plenty of other examples of guys that play well in the wind that don't have a low apex height, but he does, right? So this is perhaps the other way to get it done in these windy conditions. So I like him there at $6,900, 1.3% owned, just completely being overlooked. I mean, you could take him in 7% of lineups and have plenty of leverage to the field. I'm going to have closer to 20%, right? I'm going to try and take a relatively large stand on these guys because I think he should be at least 7 to 10% owned. I think he's being completely slept on here and fits a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for. Next up, we've got Johnny Vegas at $6,700. Now, he'll be teeing off in the afternoon. He did tee off in the morning, so somebody who went out there, didn't play his best golf, shot 2 over par, which for that wave was worse than average. So you could argue that, the reason why we're going for guys like a Cantlay before, a lot of those guys that struggled in the afternoon, would work against Johnny Vegas, but I love the fact that he's a prolific driver of the golf ball, somebody who can gain 5 or 6 strokes to the field in that category. We know he can get lightning hot with the irons too, and the putter, I mean, it's extremely volatile, but when he hits with that, and the ball striking is pretty much always going to be there. I mean, Johnny Vegas is just an absolute striper of the golf ball. He breaks slates. He goes out there, he's first round leader. He does it a lot more often than his peers, and he's only $6,700. Seems way underpriced if you ask me here. I mean, he had a bad day, right? So he should be lower priced than he was in 4-round contests, but he's priced around Marcus Armitage, Will Besseling, right? Obviously, Tringale makes sense. He's obviously going to be extremely chalky, so I'll go ahead and say that right there. But he's priced around guys that are just inferior in terms of skill set and guys that probably played even worse golf, like a Sepp Straka. He had a horrible round today, right? And he's the same price tag as Johnny Vegas, who had not a stellar performance, right? Certainly worse than average for Johnny Vegas, but still somebody I'm willing to get there at 2.1%. And now lastly, guys, the last pick we're going to touch on before we hop into the live chat and questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and fire them down below. We will cover on all of them before we get out of here. But the last pick we'll talk about, he's only $6,500, so super cheap here. Somebody who's going to give you a lot of flexibility to perhaps fit in multiple guys up top is Ju Young Kim. Like him there at that price tag. He showed quite a bit today, was 2 under par at one point. I'm not sure what score he finished at, but either day was impressive. I mean, he was hitting plenty of irons to like 10 to 15 feet for the first 9 to 10 holes that I was tracking him for. And to that point, they didn't have the shots gained metrics published, but I would imagine he had gained at least 2 to 3 strokes to the field. I mean, he was very consistently hitting greens in regulation, wasn't really cashing in with the putter as much as he should. And that's why I want to get there, because the ball striking, was indicative of like a 4 or 5 under par round. He went out there and was just absolutely torching the place to pieces. If he can get the hot flat stick, I mean, Ju Young could shoot 4 to 5 under par. He could be that guy who just breaks the slate tomorrow. And we've seen it from him. Ju Young has gone out there and played extremely well over the last few months, especially in rounds 1 and 2. He's gone out there, gone off to hot starts, continued that through the second round. The real issue for him has been on the weekend. You can see the recent form. He's number 56 in the field, which for number 105 in pricing, that's pretty damn solid value right there. Now, the longer term stuff, right? The stuff over the last 50 measured rounds, not as favorable for somebody like a Ju Young Kim, but of late has been playing some solid golf. So I think he could do a whole lot worse. He clearly showed something there during the first round and is only going to be 3% owned, which is higher than what he was for 4-round contest. He was sub 1% owned because he's such an unknown commodity, but I think it's worth riding. We've seen him carry that heater before. We've seen him get hot, get that momentum rolling before, and carry that through at least 2 to 3 rounds in an event. And perhaps he goes out there and does the same here. We'll go ahead now and touch on the questions, see what's down there in chat. We've got David who says, good Luke. What's going on? Hopefully you're doing well, David. We've got JG who says, birdie or better matchups have been money. Yeah, they were today. So for my picks today, where we ended up having those 10 hits, I believe 4 or 5 of them were birdie or better matchups. And then the rest of the 5 were all fades. So they were like over on strokes in the afternoon. Absolutely. I slammed that on Prize Picks. I took under on birdies for guys like Matthew Fitzpatrick, for guys like Colin Morikawa. Both of those ended up hitting. So it was a hit or miss board. If you took the over on birdies, which I did for quite a few guys too, you definitely got slammed on that front. But outside of that, it was a pretty solid board for round 1. So I'm excited to hop into round 2. That's for sure. We got Nick Marcy says, Grumpy John rubbed off on Scotty. Maybe he did, right? And they were talking a lot during the round. They seemed to be all buddy-buddy out there. And for somebody in John Rahm who got my ass kicked, right, by Scotty Scheffler in the Ryder Cup, I'm not sure I'd be all buddy-buddy with that guy out there. I'd have a little bit of vengeance on my mind, to be honest with you. So, yeah, maybe he is running off on him, but that's for sure. We have MPet. She's asking about the Patreon and Discord. So in the description of this video, there should be a Patreon link. If not, I'll go ahead and post one on my Twitter afterwards, or go ahead and just comment on one of my videos. I can send you a link that way. But it's patreon.com/GSLuke. And then it's on there. It's a $10 tier. So if you join that, you get access to all of those spreadsheets, the Discord. As part of that, obviously, I'll answer your questions, do one-on-one coaching with you for anything that you need with DFS. But that's how you go out and do that. Mamba says this course tore them guys apart, especially in the afternoon. Tore the guys out that were playing in the PM wave, but the guys in the morning scored pretty well. So I'm pretty happy that the afternoon got them, because if you remember yesterday, I faded all the guys up top that were playing in the afternoon, right? Like a Xander Schauffele, like a Matt Fitzpatrick, for example. The guys that were going to get torched by that wind. Hideki comes to mind. Will Zalatoris, I didn't play. There's even more. Justin Thomas, I didn't play this week because he was also playing in that wave. So yeah, they all ended up getting destroyed. But yeah, that's part of golf, man. Weather does determine everything, especially when you get a split, like a 3-shot split like we saw today. It can definitely change how the slates play. JG says, remember how well Keegan played in that last windy monsoon at the Players? He was fire. Great point. I didn't remember that, JG, but that's just another anecdotal thing that we can go off of, right? The spin rates look great. He's played well there. He's an experienced player. And I think experienced players that have been around the block also play better in the wind. It makes sense, right? More experience doing so. So that's even better to know. And that was even with a 2-stroke penalty. All the much better. That's great to hear, JG. But that's all I've got, guys, here for the second round. Going to cut it at that. Just went over everything I needed to there. So for rounds 3 and 4, we'll be doing the same thing. So expect that maybe even a little bit earlier. Obviously, the round's ending right around like 2 p.m. Eastern time. So maybe the live stream will be at like 3:30. That way, you guys can watch it on replay. I know a lot of you out there aren't able to catch these live streams live. But if you do have any questions, you are watching this right now and you had any, feel free to go ahead and comment them down below. I'm more than willing to answer your questions when we get to them. And as per usual, guys, also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you don't miss any of these live streams in the future. And also make sure you go ahead and smash the like button before you hop on out of here. I'm feeling some pretty good vibes going into the weekend. Like I said at the beginning, I've got that 10K lineup right now. That's in the top 4 of the GBP. That's taking down a lot of the single entries around the industry. Hopefully that can hold on. My one player that's kind of on edge with that lineup is going to be, who is it? Johannes Veerman. I have him at 2 over par right now, and that's tied for 69th. If Veerman gets through the cut, watch out, boys. We could be on to something with that lineup, that's for sure. So really looking forward to it, guys. We have Ricky. I did see a question. He says, is the Patreon for golf only? Do you give prize picks plays? It is for golf only. So that's a golf tier that's up there. It's for $10 right now. You get the DFS plays. You also get all of my prize picks information, but there will be a football tier to come. So for the NFL season, I'll be covering that. I did a lot of content for the football season last year. There'll be another tier for that. That'll be $10 a month. So yeah, the Patreon right now is for golf only, but there will be stuff to come. And Dankboy says, Neesmith messed you up. Yeah, I didn't play him at all this week. So that sucks, man. But yeah, it's going to happen. You're going to have guys in that mid tier that end up missing the cut, man. I wouldn't kill yourself too much about it. You're going to have guys that just underperform week to week. Just make sure you're playing a bunch of lineups, right? Like don't put all of your lineups into one single entry, that sort of thing. And you don't have to worry about that sort of stuff. You can get things wrong and still make quite a money in DFS. And by the way, guys, in Patreon, that's like one thing I talk about with my people 24/7 is lineup management, understanding what type of contest to enter, understanding how to diversify your risk. So if you are joining the Patreon, that is a huge perk of doing so because I'll go through and one-on-one coach you on how to do so. My personal strategy for it, just to give you the Spark Notes version, is to play 150 maxes. Diversify your portfolio. Give yourself as many outs as humanly possible. So when things go wrong, you can still profit because as you've seen on the channel, guys, the last few weeks, I didn't have Matt Fitzpatrick in my player pool. I didn't have JT posted in my player pool last week. I still profited. And that's because I had 150 lineups, right? I took a lot of those high upside plays. So it's DFS is just as much about projecting players as it is about actually understanding how to play DFS itself, like as a game. So we'll leave it on that, guys. Best of luck with all of your lineups here. Hopefully you learned something from the live stream that you can use and implement in your lineup making process. And I'll see you guys next time.